Welcome, everybody, and I welcome you to our Friday night workshop. And we're going to take the next 15 minutes. Um, I've named this meditation Preparing the Way. So for the next 15 minutes, let us each within ourselves simply take notice of whatever is present in our consciousness, and then uh, becoming conscious of that, aware of that, then actively consciously set that down. And you might say to that which is on your mind, the thinking or your physical sensations or your emotions, whatever is present, and setting it down. Dear friend, I'm setting you down, setting down everything of the mind, every sensory experience, so that I may be more available to what is coming my way, opening myself. So setting everything down sweetly, tenderly, um, kindly. So again, preparing the way. So let us begin this silent meditation, and we will have the sound of a bell to let us know when this meditation will be completed. Pranam to all. Welcome to our Friday night workshop on the Noble Eightfold Path. This is our fourth of 4 sessions, and we're going to, right now, we're going to move into a silent meditation, a 15-minute silent meditation. I'll offer a little bit of direction for this meditation. What I'd like you to do is to, let's all close our eyes and be seated comfortably in the meditative posture. And if you like, visualize yourself, see yourself seated comfortably on the earth beneath a vast shade tree, feeling your connection to the earth, your rootedness, your steadiness, peace and calm. And if you will, bring into your awareness that seated with you are 7 others. And of these 7, 6 of them are practitioners of another tradition, spiritual, religious tradition. And so welcome, if you will, each of these into your space, into your presence. Each of you has a vision of truth, of life, of love, of connectedness and relatedness, of God, if you will. And so these other practitioners, the 6 others who you are able to see there with you, I'd like you to bring into your, when I stop speaking, bring into your awareness, into your vision, actually see 6 different individuals, practitioners, even representatives of these other traditions. And in your heart, offer them reverence, respect, greeting, salutation. They may be a tradition different from your own, a practice different from your own, but they too have clear sight, genuine, authentic realization of the truth of life. And then after you greet and welcome these 6 specific people, there's a 7th in the circle, and that is an empty spot. That spot may be someone who has not yet been in your experience in your life, in this lifetime, in any lifetime. A person, a representative of yet another tradition, another teaching, unfamiliar to you, not known to you. Creating a space, an opening for that person to make their presence known to you. And so with that, let us begin our meditation on this community of communities, these teachers, representatives of traditions known and that one not yet known to us. May absolute peace pervade the whole universe. May absolute peace manifest through us to bless the world. May absolute peace abide in us as we abide in it, now and forevermore. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. It's so nice to be able to be with you, even though it's in this very different way. This life is precious and sacred, and it is a gift to each and every one of us. And this time that we get to be and to be together is a treasure. I welcome you all. I'm very, very grateful to be able to share with you some of the teachings from the Buddha. This workshop has been the Buddha's Eightfold Path, a path to coming together. The purpose of this workshop is and has been for each of us to discover and to access the source of true peace, and then out of that to naturally live more peacefully, more joyfully in our lives. So this is not a teaching to reach some state, some experience. Rather, it is to discover that which is left over when we let go of everything that blocks us from that immediate, direct experience. So it's not about contriving, constructing an experience. It is really much more so about letting go of all that we've held on to that has had us feeling cut off. In truth, we have never been really cut off, but we've cut ourselves off from the experience, the direct experience of that peace and that joy of life. That is our birthright, that is our true essential nature. But all of that may seem very conceptual, very philosophical, very fancy. The purpose of this workshop is for us to discover and genuinely access that for ourselves. So we began, our first session was around where are we, how did we get here? And our second session had to do with the notion of me and mine, I, who is this I? And our third session had to do with the teaching of community, really the reality of community. That is the nature of all of life. It is always, has always been, will always be in a condition of connectedness, of interconnectedness, intra-connectedness, relatedness, union, yoga. So this, again, that's why I'm stressing this isn't about putting on something in order to get to an experience of that oneness, of that relatedness and connectedness. So we can point to the teaching of community, but it is really for each of us to discover, to awaken to realize that the very nature of life is that of community. So when we talk about the notion of me and mine, of I, we have these very, very limited notions of who we are, who we've come to believe ourselves to be. And we've identified with perhaps our thoughts, our feelings, our physical bodies. And so we've ourselves cut ourselves off from that unlimited nature of ourselves. And so the Buddha and the other teachers of awakening, these teachers of realization, these way showers that were seated beneath the tree with whom we were seated. They show us a way for us to move beyond all sense of limitation, expanding and expanding and expanding. So we move beyond this limited sense of I, of who I am, to a more interconnected, that I am actually not independent. I am not cut off. But how can I reclaim? How can I recover that real sense of who I really am? I am not here. Where am I? I am not limited to this spot. When am I? I am not limited to this time. The Buddha teaches us that in the teaching of causality, that this very present moment, which is in itself is transitory, is fleeting, but it is caused and conditioned by absolutely everything that has gone before. Everything that has happened throughout all of time has collaborated, has coalesced to make this possible, this moment possible, and then this moment, and then this moment. So when we move out of a limited sense of who I am, and not only of this physical being, but also in time, that where we are is all of time exists in this moment. So all the people, all the beings who acted and whatever they did, whether good, bad, or neutral, everything that has transpired has come to make this moment possible. And we don't need to be bound to the past as it manifests, as it expresses in this moment. If we look at our own lives, and we can extrapolate that, but looking into our own lives, we can see that the effects of the accumulation of all of those effects creates a kind of trajectory that life is moving in a particular direction. But what all of these teachers are encouraging us to realize and to implement is that we do not have to be at the effect, we do not have to be bound by that trajectory. We actually, even though we may not feel we have the power to interrupt, to redirect, we do in fact have the ability to shift, to transform, to change, to alter the very direction of our lives. So the teachings are giving us ways to do that. One of the things that we can do is we can learn using our intelligence, using our discernment, our wisdom gained through life experience, by our paying attention to life. We can learn from life so that we can not be bound by, but we can actually within that life, out of all of the accumulation of circumstances and conditions, we can actually blossom forth. That is, the mud can be the mud from which a beautiful lotus flower, a whole new life is possible for each and every one of us. So how do we transform that mud, all of that pain, all of that suffering, as well as all of that joy, in as much as joy, if it is conditioned or dependent on anything, what we're looking for and aspiring to is a way of being that is no longer dependent or conditioned by any outside circumstance. That is a higher order of being, a higher order of peace, of joy, that is not caused, that is not conditioned. So we can use life's teachings, all of life's experiences to arrive in this moment and freshly, newly, bearing witness to the newness, becoming aware of the newness and the possibility of each and every moment, and accessing that, freeing ourselves from the bonds of suffering of the past. So as we consider that the ways that we have identified as an individual and limited our sense of ourselves, thereby limiting our experience of possibility, of open-heartedness, of true, deep, abiding peace and joy. We can see that perhaps out of fear, perhaps out of not understanding, perhaps out of what we have been handed by generation upon generation of misunderstanding, what we could call ignorance, of mistaken understanding of the meaning and purpose of life. Becoming free of all of those. So we've been handed a great misunderstanding, how we were taught, how we were raised, generation upon generation upon generation. And it is our blessing, our joy, our privilege, the gift for us to awaken, to be free, and to offer freedom to others. I want to mention that in that meditation that we began with, and are seated beneath the tree with those other 6 other teachers, those other practitioners. What I know to be true is that each and every one of us is a teacher, is a sharer, is an offerer of healing, of transformation. That even though I may not know everybody who is present, I know that each of us, each of you, touches many people's lives. So that it is not only those teachers of other traditions, but imagine all the people in your life whose lives you touch, whose lives in which you make a difference, a contribution. Naturally, by your love, by your kindness, by your generosity. It may not be perfect, but I just know that that is who each of you, who each of us is in our heart of hearts. When given the opportunity to have our best self shine forth, to show up, that's who we want to be. That is who I believe each of you, each of us is. So this is not limited to the masters, the leaders, those practitioners, leaders of those traditions. This is each and every one of us. So we're moving into a time, I believe, when it is no longer just about a leader of a community. And it's a transformation of what it means to lead. Now, some of these teachings on what it means to lead are actually quite ancient. In fact, many of these teachings being very, very ancient, they are coming forth in a new, fresh, vital, vibrant, energetic, enthused, exciting way. That too, when we think of the accumulation or the amalgamation, the collection of all the teachings, as well as all circumstances and conditions that have made this moment possible, that what we are seeing, if we have the eyes to see and the trust in the truth of life, we can bear witness to the flowering, to the blossoming of the lotus flower of the wisdom of many, many traditions. We take them out of the books, we take the books off the shelves, we take them out of the books, and we apply them, we live them in our lives, and we make them not a concept, not a philosophy, but a living tradition, a living possibility, a living realization in life. So similarly to this limited notion of who we are in this individuation, which is not separate, but it does have, there is this individuation in each of us. We can be individuated, but still remember our connectedness and our relatedness. So similarly to how we are encouraged, implored to move beyond this very limited sense of who I am, we are also encouraged to move beyond any limitation of our community. There's a teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh. Many of you who I've gotten to be with are familiar with this teaching that I share about because I find it to be so vital and so inspiring. Tucked away in one of his books, he speaks about the Buddha Maitreya. In the Buddhist tradition, the Buddha of the future is known as Maitreya. Thich Nhat Hanh speaks to, he suggests, perhaps the future Buddha is not an individual. Perhaps it is a community. So that this era of being focused on individual leaders of traditions, which I dare say is a misappropriation of power by practitioners. It's a misunderstanding. I've mentioned that in the Buddhist tradition, the Buddha, for the first couple hundred years after the Buddha's passing, there were no images of the Buddha. He was a human being. He was an awakened being, but he was very, very much wanting to not be identified as, or for the teachings to not be limited to him as a teacher, as the Buddha. So there were no depictions of him. So he was a space. This assignment of personality or assignment of these energies, these vibrations of many, many degrees of grossness or subtleness, and moving from the gross to the subtle, to the more subtle, to the more subtle. So the Buddha, in a sense, was a vibration and energy. And that vibration and energy is always present, always available. And then it is a matter of us availing ourselves of our accessing that and knowing that for ourselves, not as some doctrine and also not as something out there, but rather as something that is within each and every one of us. So similarly to that vibration of the Buddha, which you could name, if you like, as the Buddha nature or that Buddha essence. So that is a very, very subtle, pure, beautiful energy that is always existent, always present, always available. So I would say similarly, the energy of community, which is the true nature of life. That is what is. So that is an energetic vibration. That is what is in life. Again, for us to discover and to tap into, which we can do more and more easily as we move beyond all limitation, sense of limitation. We move beyond the sense of a limited sense of I. And by various sadhanas and practices, that simply melts away. and we gain access to a more expansive sense of who I am, that I am not this limited self, that I am community. I am the whole community. So we're, I believe, encouraged to move in an expansive sense of community so that it is not only as valuable and beautiful and precious and sweet as our community is. We are encouraged and invited to move beyond identification with our community, with this community, which when we become identified too closely with that, it can only cause conflict, because then there is my community versus your community. And so the spirit of community is moving beyond my community and your community to what binds us, what joins us is community. So I'll leave that with you to mull over. At this time, I'd like to make a request for if you'd like to support Awake Yoga Meditation. We invite you to make a financial contribution, both to our meditation community and to Swami Nityananda, our minister, our preceptor. So you'll see on your screen, if you're participating via a laptop, you'll see a place where you can link to the offertory page. If you're working with a PC, you may need to copy and paste the link. If you're working with a Mac, you should be able to click directly on it. And if those of you who are joining us via a phone call, you can go to our awakeyogameditation.org website and make a contribution there. So I just want to reiterate that the teachings are for free, that we will offer these teachings forever and a day without expectation of any sort. And as you do, we all live in this world and we have expenses. So I very deeply, heartfelt wise thank you for your generous gift and offering to the community. And so we'll take 4 minutes or so now to do that. Thank you. Last week we had a question that someone who was participating via Facebook, I think it was, they had shared a question, so we didn't catch the question. And so I have it now. I'd like to share that and respond. And I will say that it has been wonderful to have this question to meditate on, to reflect on, to dive into during this last week. So here's the question. In your opinion, what is the difference between buddhi, viveka, or discrimination, and judgment? So I love the question in so many ways. I'll start with, in your opinion. This 4-session workshop grew out of our previous workshop, which was on the teachings of the first of the Noble Eightfold Path, which is Sammaditthi, which is right view. And one of the things that the Buddha always encourages us to do is move beyond speculation or opinion. So, and so this, in your opinion, it is an opinion that I share with you. And as I reflected on that more, I came to a recognition, and that is that I've been a student of the Buddha Dhamma for some time now. And it occurred to me that even everything I share, that I speak about the Buddha Dhamma, is necessarily an opinion. It is my own interpretation, my experience, my understanding of the Buddha Dhamma. I will say that there have been times where I, in moments of daring or even radical self-reflection, have wondered, gosh, I wonder if this is really, if I am being true to the teaching of the Buddha. At one level, that could seem to be a problem. Certainly, I don't want to represent as the Buddha Dhamma something that is not. And on the other hand, it can only be a personal understanding, a personal reflection. And I think that's why I love the Buddha's teaching and his encouraging us to all awaken to these truths for ourselves. Because they are, so long as they are teachings, philosophies, understandings, as wonderful and beautiful as they are, as long as they are outside of us, they are someone's opinion. They are something that we are hearing, something that we are thinking about, some concept, some notion, not some belief. And there's nothing wrong with any of those. It's just that they're limited. They limit our actual realization, access to the truth, to that, the realization of that to which the teachings are pointing. So of course, in my opinion, it is important to strive to be true to the Dhamma, to the teachings as represented, as shared by the Buddha. But they are still only and can only be a finger pointing at the moon. They are not the moon itself. And we're all encouraged, invited, implored to discover these experiences for ourselves. So limited, yes. Oh, there was another, I realized many of the suttas, the stories and the teachings of the Buddha in the Sutta Pitaka, the section of the Pali Canon, Pali Buddhism, Southern Buddhism, the portion of the canon which relays the teachings of the Buddha. And many of them are related to certain occasions in the Buddha's life, where this happened and that happened, and this was his response. But many of them begin with the phrase, "Thus have I heard." And so thus have I heard in some ways, I know that it has a very, very specific meaning, but one way of understanding that could be, okay, this is how I hear these teachings. Am I hearing them accurately, or am I hearing them through a filter? We're invited to become aware of that through which we're hearing, are already knowing what we know, what we believe about life, that filter, which are those views, conscious or unconscious, those ways, everything that we know about life, often unexamined. And so we're encouraged to examine those. And even if we are seeing them through a filter, if we will allow ourselves to be transformed by the teachings will transform us from within. So there's certainly that open-heartedness to the teachings, that willingness to let go of everything, our firmly held beliefs and notions and everything that we know about life. That, maybe there's another way. All of this that I know about life has gotten me to this experience of life. Is this experience of life as it is? Is it joyful? Is it peaceful? If it's not, then it's worth our examination and our consideration. So thus have I heard, and it is my joy to share them with you and perhaps provide an opening for you to explore them and to know them for yourself. Okay? So in your opinion, so that doesn't mean we can't have discussion. Um, there is a wonderful teaching. You may be familiar with it, but I want to dive into it a little bit and kind of tease it out. And it is a teaching found, I believe, in the some of the most ancient texts of the Vedas. And it is the teaching of three blind men who are told they've never experienced this animal, but they're told that there's an animal in the village, it's an elephant, and they've never experienced an elephant, and each of them is blind. And so one of these fellows goes and he is feeling the elephant. Each of them is feeling the elephant. And one of them feels the trunk of the elephant. And he says, oh, well, this feels like a very large snake. And one of the fellows feels the ear of the elephant, very different. And he says, oh, this feels like it's a fan. Or another fellow feels the leg of the elephant. Oh, this is a pillar, the trunk of a mighty tree. And another feels the tail. And he said, oh, well, this is a rope. This has the quality of the rope. And in some depictions of this fable, these fellows actually come to blows over this because they are absolutely certain, based on their experience, that this is how I see. Through this sensory interpretation, this experience, I'm experiencing it directly. It's obviously a thick snake, or it's obviously a rope. Can't you see? Can't you tell? It's obviously the trunk of a tree. It's obviously a fan. So they actually come to blows. And the only reason that this is a problem is they fail to recognize simply the limitation of their own perception, their own interpretation, their own understanding. So imagine a retelling of this fable where they all recognize their own individual limitation, and they say, hey, this feels like a rope over here. What is your part of this elephant feel like? And the other fellows, they can share about that trunk of a tree or that thick snake or that fan. And oh, wow, so you've got that experience and I've got this experience. So when we fail to recognize our own sensory limitation and think that we have the one true view of truth, of this elephant, called this truth, that we're calling an elephant, then we come into conflict with one another. And that is part why I was encouraging this meditation, where we're at the beginning tonight of seated beneath that tree in a community of other traditions, so that they have another view. They have perhaps from another time, another culture where that awakened master who was in that culture at that time, he was seeing life as it is, and he was necessarily responding to the misunderstanding, to the confusion, to the suffering of the people in that culture at that time, that part of the world. And so, again, we're just always encouraged to expand and to include a variety of perspectives, of understandings of, well, so what is your way of seeing the truth? What is your way of understanding? And how might that expand my understanding and enrich my experience of that teaching or your tradition? And um, so um, it's in that light that I was reflecting on this question. So in your opinion, what is the difference between buddhi, viveka, and judgment? Okay, so uh, let me begin with judgment, because I use that term sometimes. And as I was kind of expanding on, well, what are some of the different meanings or understandings of the word judgment? One phrase is using your best judgment. So taking all of the information that you have, putting that together, and using my best judgment, this is the choice I can make. There's another form of judgment that I use more often, and judgment as in passing judgment, making a judgment of another or of a situation. So passing judgment on something, which is uh, in that way kind of has a negative context of, rather than just accepting something, it is passing a judgment on it, saying it is right or wrong, or more right or less right, more wrong. Um, so um, so there are a couple of different ways of looking at judgment. About buddhi, a couple of sessions, 2 sessions ago, I mentioned that an interpretation or a translation of the etymology of Buddha is from buddhi and or bhud, and tha is beyond, and bud in this case is intellect, intelligence, thinking mind. And so in that context, we were exploring what it means to move beyond the thinking mind, which is that one aspect of that can be that constant assessing and analyzing and everything that we say about life. Life as it is very plain and simple, and then there is all that we say about life. But there is also the intellect, moving beyond the intellect. Buddha moving beyond the intellect. So the intellect is a wonderful, extraordinary asset that we all have in our lives, and it is worthy of our cultivation and our development, our intellect, our intelligence. The In my estimation, in my view, in my opinion, what we're encouraged to do, though, is to have as the basis of how we see and experience life is something beyond buddhi, beyond intelligence, beyond intellect. So that if we will go to a place of quietude, of non-conversation, non-analysis, non-description about life, non-adding something to life, what we say, the story, all of that analysis, all of that discussion, if we move to a place beyond all of that, to a place of stillness, and by going to that place, then we come to a place of non-separation, not a separate self, no notion of me and you, no separation. We move to a consciousness of oneness, of unity, um, of no separate thingness. So we move into no thingness, into that unitive state of consciousness. And then we can move from that place into our intellect and have that place, that state of consciousness, inform and guide and direct that place of intelligence. So if we look into our world, there is just unbelievable and an explosion of expression, of manifestation, of expressions of intellect. Some of those expressions of intellect uh, lead to cause a sense of divisiveness, of separation. They are destructive of the very sense of unity, of oneness, of connectedness, of relatedness of us humanly to one another, with one another, to our whole human family, as well as to the animal kingdom, the vegetation kingdom, to the whole planet, and beyond this planet to the whole community of life. So many of those uses of intelligence um, put more barriers, put more stuff in the way of our realization of that connectedness, of our oneness. So it does make a difference of what the basis of our intelligence, of the expression of our intelligence. And we will find, if we have as the basis of our intelligence that oneness, that is what is, that pure isness, that pure beingness, that when we connect with that, certainly a lot of the urges, a lot of the cravings, a lot of the grasping, a lot of the attachments in life fall away. And we would be much more discriminative, much more discerning on how we use our intelligence. So I do want to move away from an either or understanding of that buddhi, of that intelligence, to a more inclusive both and. But it matters what we put first. If we put no thingness, that place of stillness, of oneness, if we put that first, then that will inform and guide and direct the intelligence and how we express it, how we manifest that in the world. So Viveka, it's actually in Sanskrit, it has a very, very specific teaching, and I'll focus on that, and that is of discrimination or discernment. So it is very important for us to use, I would say, our God-given common sense. That's a phrase that Swami Shankarananda that was relayed to me, that he had shared by a friend. But using our common sense, using our discernment in this world, as we live in this world of name and form, this world of action, to look deeply into a subject and to use discernment, use critical thinking. And there's so many aspects of that. Not one of those is just coming to me, I don't know why, is not taking as gospel anything that anybody says. Using your discernment, if something doesn't smell right, if it doesn't feel right, if it doesn't sound right, just because some person who has some kind of authority says it, please don't just swallow it hook, line, and sinker. Use our discernment. It's important for all of us to use and trust our discernment. I think many of us haven't been trained to, haven't been encouraged to really trust our ability to discern and to see what's right, what's wrong, what's for the best, what's skillful, what's unskillful. So discernment, discrimination is essential as we pay attention to life's experiences. That I haven't seen anywhere where that discernment is a notion of paying attention. In the Pali teachings, we would think of it as mindfulness, as sati. But mindfulness is one way of getting at that, but pay attention to our experiences so that we're not bound to relive the same things over and over and over and over again. If we're really paying attention to our experiences, we will see those experiences of suffering before they actually take hold, or even before the root causes that make them even possible to arise. We can, and that's very much all about discernment. So paying attention, discernment. Now, all of that said about those wonderful qualities of buddhi, of intelligence, of discernment, of discrimination, all of that exists in a world where, in order to discern or discriminate is a good word to get into it, to really delve into it. Discriminate means to distinguish between one and the other. And so there is necessarily two-ness. In the teachings of Vedanta, one way that could be approached is to discriminate between the real and the unreal. And so it is important for us to really look closely and discern, and to use our ability to look into and to steer clear of and to move more closely into what is really real, what is really lasting. That said, there is a time in my experience that even discrimination needs to be moved beyond. And if you understand this, you'll see that I am juxtaposing discrimination and beyond discrimination, which is it's a false dichotomy that doesn't exist. But in order for us to speak about it using language, using ideas, we can point to a moving beyond discriminating between a thing and a not thing. So wonderful intelligence, our intellect, our viveka, our discrimination, our discernment in this world. But all of them, the only way that I know right now to speak to it is hold them all lightly. Hold them all with an appreciative understanding that even discrimination, in as much as it distinguishes between one and another, that is ultimately going to be moved beyond as we merge into oneness. So I'll leave it with that for that topic. So I don't know if there are other questions. We're not going to be able to dive into those anymore tonight. So at this time, usually I share a practice for everybody, if you like, to participate in during the week between sessions. And so this will be the conclusion of this workshop. And we will be having another workshop on the Buddha's teachings in a couple of months. Next Friday, you can use the same link that you used tonight. There is a satsang with Swami Nityananda. So you're welcome to join us for that opportunity to ask questions of Swami Nityananda, anything related to the teachings or your meditation practice. I also want to invite and encourage everybody, if you're interested in pursuing a deeper practice in meditation, Swami can initiate you into some deeper practices. I'll just leave it at that. So there's the satsang next week, and then through June, we'll be having other teachings on Vedanta and Buddhism And so you're all welcome to join us for those. So I will be continuing the daily meditations at 6 a.m., 12 noon, and 6 p.m. So it's a loving invitation for you to tap in, to join in, if you like, to any one of those or all of those. And as in the past, if you want to check in and just acknowledge, hey, I'm here meditating with you, you can text me. And there's obviously no need to do that, but it's nice. One nice piece of it is knowing that we're not alone, that we're participating in this sacred adventure and that particular practice with others. So we're never alone, and you're always welcome to join us. So tonight we're going to close. We have just about 15 minutes. We'll close with a closing meditation. So we'll all be seated comfortably in the meditative posture with eyes closed. So this has been a blessing and a gift to be able to be together in this way, to join together in our hearts and our minds, coming into the experience of our relatedness, our connectedness. Hopefully finding a possibility of shifting the trajectory of our lives if they're heading in a direction that we want something more, something sweeter, something kinder, something more loving, that we can change the trajectory and discover that source of peace in our lives and access that, and then naturally to live more peacefully and joyfully in our lives. So for the next few minutes, I invite you to look into your experience and any difficulty, any suffering, anything that you're trying to change, anything that you're putting up with in your life that you would love to change. I offer this to you. If you would like, just for the next 15 minutes, you can set that down, or you can hand that off to someone in the group. To me, I'm open to that. If you like, allow me to hold your suffering for you. We're very much able to relate to another's suffering in a very different way than sometimes we are able to relate to our own. Sometimes we feel stuck with our suffering. That is, it is intractable, unmoving. If we will set it down or hand it off just for a few minutes, then that can shift, create a little space, a little opening for us in that suffering and how we are, how that is for us. So I offer, if you like, allow me or anyone else in the group that you trust to hold your suffering for you for the next 15 minutes, or simply set it down. And at the end of our meditation, if you would like to leave it there, you're welcome to. If you'd like to take it back, you're welcome to do that. Whatever you like. And I just want to say thank you for that trust, for that sacred trust, to be allowed to hold another's suffering with pure love, without being harmed or injured in any way. May all of your hopes and dreams, your fondest hopes and dreams for your life be fulfilled. Thank you for your presence here. Thank you for your presence on the planet. Good night.